Good evening friends, I am Dhananjay Kumar and I am MVP on connected system. In this particular video tutorial we are going to learn how we can work with fault contract in WCF. We'll see that if we are not handling the exception at the service side, then how the whole proxy is getting failed while a single error is coming at the service side. And we'll look ahead and see how we can handle an exception and expose that exception using fault contract. So for the theoretical part of or theoretical definition of fault contract and description of fault contract, you can refer my another articles. But here in this purpose of this video is to completely show you or rather give you a demo that how we can achieve a fault contract. So let's go ahead and open your Visual Studio. I have Visual Studio 2.10. You can do the same thing in Visual Studio 2.8 also. Just go ahead and create a new WCF service application. What I'm going to do here, what I'm gonna do is that first I'll show you my service without handling the exception, and then I'll show you that while we handle the exception how we are going to do that. Just go ahead from WCF tab, select WCF service application project template. Remember, if you are using Visual Studio 2008, you will get WCF service application project template under web tab, not in WCF tab. Fine. Give some name here. I'm giving its name demo fault service. What I'm gonna do here is that I'll create a very simple service which will have only one operation contract, and that will do operation of division. It's taking time here. Go ahead and delete whatever default code is given to you by WCF. The purpose of this default code is only to show you that how you can write a simple service. We really don't need those codes. So what I done here is that I have deleted all the default code which is getting created by WCF when we are creating a WCF service. I believe here all of you who is anyone of you who is watching this video, they must be aware of what is operation contract and all. Let's create a operation contract which will return double and which will take two number of the double type. The purpose of this operation contract is very simple, to divide to number, and as I told you that our main core purpose of this particular video is to find out how we can work with fault contract. Okay, now go here and just implement that. So just copy paste that from here. Make it public and return number 1 divided by number 2. This is a very simple implementation. All you if you see the code, we are just dividing to number, and I'm going to rely on the default binding which is given by WCF for you, and that is WSHTTP binding. Let's go ahead and run. First compile your service. Run it. In the meantime, again I want to say the same thing is that right now I have written a service which is not handling the exception. So if some exception is coming at a service side, our client will get that exception in terms of that whole proxy will get corrupted because we are not handling that. We'll see that ahead. Up to this point our service is up and running. Fine, just copy paste this particular URL, that is our endpoint of our service. And what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to open a new Visual Studio and go ahead and just create a console client. Fine enough, this is a very simple console client, and add your service here, add service reference, copy paste the endpoint URL, endpoint of your service, that's URL. If you see, our service is successfully added, that div function. Add a namespace of your service. My project name is console application 3, so it's that. Now create a proxy. All you know that service 1, since our service name is service 1, so WCF is already created for you. Service 1 client class, you can create a proxy using that class. What is a proxy actually? Proxy is nothing but instance of your service at a client side. Service is nothing but a class which is running on an external machine. So really, to use that class, you need to instantiate that class, right? So proxy is nothing but instance of the service at a client side. Now we have created that, and if you see proxy, we can call the div method like a simple other methods of a normal class. And here we need to pass, let us say, 2 parameter, 30 and 5 I am passing, and save the result in a variable called result. Print that. Now go ahead and run your client. What I did here is, in the first line is that I created a proxy of the service. In second line, normally in a very usual way, I'm calling our only one operation contact div and passing the two parameter, two double input parameter to that function. In third line, I'm just displaying the result which is coming from the service. Let's go ahead and run this particular client application. And here we are getting the expected result 0, right? Because when you divide 30 by 5, remainder is 0, right? Now what I am going to show you is that just change your number 2 from 5 to 0. Now at the service side, we are expecting a divide by 0 exception, because we cannot divide any number by 0, right? So here some exception is coming, right? And we have some exception we are expecting, and that particular exception we have not handled at the service side. So let's go ahead and again run and see what's happening. We are getting some wild result. We are getting some unexpected result. We really don't know what is that. It means the exception is not handled, right? So what I'm gonna do is that let's handle the exception and see how we can display a meaningful error message to our client, that what really happening. If we run again, we really are not getting any idea like what is happening, what is NAN and whatever. In your case, you might get a runtime exception. In my case, I'm getting the NAN. If you are using Visual Studio 2008, you might get a runtime exception. Fine. So now go ahead to your service. This is my service. Create an instance of divide by 0 exception. And we'll check if number 2 is equal to 0, then only we need to handle the exception, right? Then what we'll do, to throw new fault exception, that is divide by 0 exception. and that takes two parameter. One is this exception and other is, you can say, number 2 is 0 at service side. Fine. Now if you see this particular line, that why I am using fault exception /t, fault exception divided by 0 exception, because if you want to propagate exception from service to client, we need to use the generic fault exception class rather than the normal fault exception class which we normally use in our .NET programs, because we really don't know that what type of exception our service is going to throw at a runtime. That is why we need a generic exception. So the exception is really the exception which we are using here is that is a generic exception, and that is fault exception T. Now this T can take anything. This T can take any CLR type. This particular T can take any CLR type. This particular T can take any data contract, or in our case we are taking it as a divide by 0 exception. Fine. Now we have implemented the exception, or we can say in other words that we have handled the exception at the service side, but really we need to say to our client that we have handled some exception, and that is done through something called fault contract. Type of divide by 0 exception. Fine. Now again compile your code. Fine, we need one more parenthesis here. So our service is compiled successfully. Again run your service. Service is up and running. Now again go back to your client and update your service reference, because we have done changes in our service, so we need to update our service reference such that our changes get reflected to the client. Now go ahead and run your service. Run your client, sorry. And here you are getting number 2 is 0 at the service side, right? Now what you need to do is that, why we got this runtime error, because at the client side we have not handled the exception. So what you really need to do is that go to your client. Before calling this, the normal simple .NET exception handling, if exception is coming, catch exception ex console.writeLine ex.message. Now our output should be, here we are. So number 2 is 0 as service side. So here in this way, using fault contract and fault contract T, the generic fault contract class, we can pass a technology specific exception to a generic error information to the client. So it was for me in this video for you, that how we can use the fault contract and pass the exception message to client. Thank you so much, and in further videos I'll show you how we can pass data contract as a exception type to our client. Thank you so much.